Welcome to the SAP Community Call about consume APIs of SAP solution with ease. And we have today with us the SAP Cloud SDK development team. So please take it away.
Thanks, Moshe. Hello from me. I'm Jordan, developer advocate for the SAP Cloud SDK, and I have Matthias and Akil with me. And today we want to welcome you to the next SAP Cloud SDK community call, and thanks for joining. Like Moshe already announced, we want to talk to you about consuming APIs of SAP solutions and how easy it is to consume different product APIs with the Cloud SDK. First of all, we want to say that what we demonstrate today is not yet part of our generally available product, meaning that you should always keep in mind that when you make decisions, you should make them based on what's available today. Many things that we show are for your information only. Having said that, let's have a look at what we will talk about today. First, we'll start with a small overview and the recent changes in the Cloud SDK, what happened in the last weeks and months. Then, of course, we move forward to a deep dive in consuming services. We have also 2 demos here. And last but not least, we will need your feedback. So please stay tuned and provide feedback. All right, many of you already know the SAP Cloud SDK, but for those that are joining us for the first time, I'll start with a small recap. What is the Cloud SDK? To explain this, we'll have a look at this picture demonstrating a high-level view of an SAP application. And we see the Cloud SDK in the middle in yellow, acting as a bridge to different SAP products. On the left side, you see S4HANA, C4HANA, and so on. And also, looking at the bottom, we see the SAP Cloud Platform services that can also be very easily consumed using the SAP Cloud SDK. By building the application itself, we see that the Cloud SDK works together with the SAP Cloud Application Programming Model, and you're also free to use any framework of your choice when you use Cloud SDK. We also see that the Cloud SDK offers continuous delivery capabilities, which are an important part of the cloud-native qualities of cloud applications. This is another view of how the Cloud SDK is positioned. In this slide, we see the extensibility of S4HANA as an example how we support development. In this case, we see that we have 2 ways to extend S4HANA functionality. On the left-hand side, we have the so-called in-app extensibility, meaning that we build features and extend business logic directly into S4HANA. This is what our customers and partners mostly do with the versions so far. But on the right-hand side, we see the SAP Cloud Platform and the so-called side-by-side extensibility, which allows us to extend S4HANA and our business processes in a way that actually bring cloud-native qualities into our business processes. And by talking about cloud-native, we see that we have very fast turnarounds. We are able to release very fast, and we bring innovation much faster to our users. It's important to see that the Cloud SDK supports the cloud part, meaning that when you work with the SAP Cloud Platform, you can make use of the Cloud SDK capabilities. What happened in the last weeks? We worked on different topics. On the Java side, we extended our blockchain support, allowing now to use blockchain nodes on Azure and AWS natively. As usual, we are updating and following the latest S/4HANA API updates. Have a look at the last point here. It's encouraged for you to update to version 3 if you haven't done yet. So we're keeping this point now because version 2 is already in maintenance mode. For the JavaScript side, we added support for OData batch requests. And the highlight here is support for the cloud native application programming model. So if you leverage the cloud application programming model, you can do so in a JavaScript project as well. And on the continuous delivery side, we also support cloud application programming model based projects. So this is really what we did in the last month. And as usual for JavaScript as well, we followed the S/4HANA API updates. All right, having said this, I want to turn over to Akhil, who will talk to us about consuming services of SAP solutions.
Thank you, Jordan. A very warm welcome from my side. My name is Akhil. I am working as development architect in the SAP Cloud SDK development team. And I would take you through a little conceptual overview of how SAP Cloud SDK offers those client libraries which help you consume APIs or services from SAP solutions or even Cloud Platform offerings. So what are these client libraries? Let's go back to this little picture that Jordan showed a couple of slides back. And here, if you see, the SAP Cloud SDK essentially is in the center of all the components shown in the picture. This makes it uniquely positioned to talk to the SAP's line of business solutions, whether it's Concur or Qualtrics or S/4HANA or Fieldglass or what have you. And how it does is SAP Cloud SDK for many of these solutions provides client libraries for the services exposed by these LOB solutions. These client libraries in most cases are OData based, and wherever it's pure REST are also REST based. We have pre-configured, pre-generated these client libraries, and they are available with the SAP Cloud SDK as a standard offering. And when you use these client libraries, you are also free to use all other SDK features like abstraction to Cloud Platform Destination API, or use the resilience or fault tolerance or multi-tenancy or caching capabilities of the SAP Cloud SDK. So all your existing cloud native qualities that you would want to keep or bake in using the SDK are very well seamlessly working with all the APIs or client libraries you get with the SDK. The good thing is we don't spend much time in generating these client libraries. We have a generator, and this generator makes these client libraries available to you by a click of a button. I highlight these touch points with LAB solutions and Cloud Platform services because these client libraries offer you this window into these solutions without really getting into those physically, but you have the libraries at your avail. And we have an automated pipeline which takes the API descriptors, API specifications as input and generates these Java libraries or JavaScript libraries for you. With these libraries, what you get is a type safe and a fluent access to these services, whether it's create, read, update, or delete. We have this generator generally available for OData based libraries or OData based services. For the REST based services, we use it internally so far only, but would also like to ask you, as Jordan mentioned, your feedback would be crucial to help us make this decision, whether the REST-based library generator should also be generally available as part of the SDK. How these client libraries function together. It's a visualization which quite closely represents the packaging of these libraries. They are packaged as modules. These modules, though they are quite well integrated in the sense, in the same programming environment, you are free to choose and call the libraries interchangeably, but they're also loosely coupled. And we have a pipeline. We do hear from our potential consumers, and based on which libraries are going to make sense for future SDK releases, we keep updating or upgrading the SDK with those libraries too. As you can see in the picture, the SDK core services like abstraction from the various platform flavors, or having security, multi-tenancy, resilience, and all are given to you, whether you use these libraries or not. As well, the CD toolkit that Jordan mentioned is a given to you also. If you're wondering, if you have never used these libraries, what do these libraries give you? If you were to, for example, consume an OData service which was accessing business partner service exposed by SAP S/4HANA, and you were to create this call yourself, you would have to first get the configuration from somewhere, do the authentication yourself, build the HTTP request with the headers, the endpoints, even build the filters in your query, then send the request, connect to the system, get the response, maybe serialize, deserialize it, and convert the result yourself. With the library, what you get is an object representation of the business partner API on which you can directly run your SQL based commands directly. So the filters, the select criterions against a given destination, which could also configure, are simply done by a single line of code, as against a lot of handcrafted code otherwise. So you as developer don't have to worry too much about the technical infrastructural problems, but rather really worry about what your business problem is, what kind of fields do you need, which filters do you want to apply so that your data set is relevant for you, and the SDK in the background does it all for you. This is quite a conceptual overview. We will get our hands dirty, and for this I hand it over to Matthias, who will give us a couple of demos which will see the SDK in action.
Yeah, thank you so much, Akhil. Very warm welcome, last but not least, also from my side. I'm Matthias. I'm also a developer with the Java SDK team. And yeah, as Akhil just showed you what the SDK actually provides, it's always nice to have a good overview and a nice introduction. But then, of course, we're developers and also want to get our hands dirty and see how this actually looks like in practice, and get a little bit into yeah, the practical things. So I want to take you through, again, a brief disclaimer, because now we're going to look at some code, that the code snippets that we're actually going to show are, as of today, not part of the SDK and don't promise anything. So yeah, just a small re-emphasize on that one. So for the hands-on part today, we brought two yeah, small demos where we want to show off a little bit, on the one hand side, how this looks in practice from a consumption point of view, and then also how the behind the scenes magic is actually working, and get a little bit more insight into that, so that you yeah, overall can get a better understanding of what we want to provide and how it would integrate into your code. So for the first demo, I actually brought an integration with the SAP workflow service. What is the workflow service? Well, it's on SAP Cloud Platform, and it allows to actually build and run, manage workflows. There's a common workflow definition language, a standard language that they follow, and that is well defined. and it helps to automate business processes, end-to-end processes, especially when they are targeting multiple applications, multiple organizational points, and so on and so forth. Yes. So I won't go into all of the details now what this service actually provides. I linked the necessary or the relevant information here within the slides. I can very briefly show you what this looks like. So here, for instance, this could be one of your workflows that you define where you have events, and then events trigger next event in this well-defined process, and then there are process instances which have state, and so on and so forth. And of course, the service on Cloud Foundry has an API, a well-defined API, and for us the question is now, how could a potential client library for this workflow service look like? Maybe we want our application, our cloud application, to trigger certain events, to get the state of processes in order to manipulate them or evaluate them and act based on the states. So I brought a quick line of code. I created a very small sample servlet as an application to show off a little bit how such an API would be used. So basically, inside our get method, first we instantiate a destination just in the same way that we would for any other system, whether it's an ERP system or it's a third-party system or what have you. We instantiate our destination, which we would need to bind in Cloud Foundry, and then we have actually a workflow definitions API. This would be one of the workflow APIs that are offered, and that can be addressed programmatically together with our destination, which sets up basically everything that we need. Then we could, for instance, in this case, retrieve all of the current definitions that we have and manipulate them, or use the data model, the VDM, to actually evaluate these workflows programmatically within our app. So we deployed this application, and this is what then the result would look like. So we would get a batch of services back, workflow definitions, and if I can briefly show this in here, we could access them here. Okay, I would have to relog on. Never mind. I put the result here. You can imagine if this works. So as you can see, the API call or the usage of the client library is quite minimalistic and quite simple, and isn't really different from how you would expect any other API calls with the Cloud SDK. So what would it look like? These would be the steps necessary in order to use it. We would have to add the dependency to our Maven POM, bind, of course, the service that we want to use in Cloud Foundry. So in this case, the workflow service, have our destination set up there in any way that we want the authentication and authorization to happen. Of course, there is available what is available in Cloud Foundry, as in any other case. And then we just instantiate the API service together with the destination, and then we can access all of our functions programmatically. So you can see it's quite quite slim and quite easy to use and to integrate into an existing application. And this is also one of the values that we promise ourselves from it, because there is so few overhead, and because usage becomes the same across different services or different third-party systems, that we actually have great value. All right, so that for the first part, for the workflow service demo. The second part of the demo, where I want to show a little bit more, is actually consuming Qualtrics and accessing Qualtrics through APIs. A little bit of background on this. So what is Qualtrics? I think you probably have heard about it. So it's an experience management tool that allows for all sorts of what is called experience data to be collected, analyzed, evaluated. And this first and foremost, of course, incorporates information about how your customers like your product. You can create surveys, you can measure NPS scores, but also do stuff like market analysis and so on and so forth. So it's quite a lot that can be done there. And this might also be relevant for cloud applications. So imagine your cloud application wants to ask for feedback on the fly and create surveys through Qualtrics. Then an API would come in handy for this. And I can show a little bit how this could look like. So for instance, here created a small integration test survey. We have in this case only 2 questions, set it up. But this is in the how the UI from the Qualtrics point of view would look like. And fortunately, Qualtrics offers a set of defined APIs that we can use. And from there, we can generate an API definition for our Java client. So how do we actually provide that? How can we obtain a client library? What we do as this is a REST API and not specifically our data API, leverage the Open API generator. As Akhil already mentioned, we have a fully automated integrated pipeline that is able to fetch the API specifications and generate Java client library out of it. And the idea here is that we don't only generate the normal Open API classes that come out of there, but we integrate them together with the SDK. That is how we actually achieve that we can use all of the SDK features together with the generated code from the Open API specification. So we basically only generate the VDM, we only generate the data model and the service classes, which represent the signatures for all of the methods that the API offers. And then through custom templates, we integrate that with the SDK code and then ship that pre-generated with the SDK. So this is how we actually achieve libraries for this. As I mentioned, so this is how it would look like for API specifications. So we validate, generate them, and then integrate them into the SDK through a fully automated pipeline, which means minimal manual effort, which means that we can actually scale this also. For the Qualtrics, if we set this up, again, I set up a small Qualtrics destination endpoint with the survey that I just showed you, and then we can actually fetch this survey or create new surveys in our Qualtrics environment, and then potentially serve these surveys to a user, collect responses, and so on and so forth. Exactly. To give a little bit of context, let's see. So this is the survey that I just showed off. And here on Cloud Foundry, I deployed my application that I just showed you. And in this case, for instance, we get a survey back that we created through our API, which has some questions and other definitions, and also it has some responses. So we can actually evaluate the results within here. All right. Yeah, this is what you would get when executing this through our application. All right, and with these small insights into how client libraries could be used and could look like, I hand it over to Jordan to collect some feedback.
Thanks, Akil and Matthias, for a great presentation and demos. Now we ask you to help us with our next steps, developing the SAP Cloud SDK. As you learned, we already ship client libraries for S/4HANA, which come with the Cloud SDK out of the box. And what we want to know from you is which other SAP products are might be interesting for you, for your project and for your customers, so that we can consider shipping them also together with the Cloud SDK. So if you can have a look at this. And of course, talking about OData and REST, as you might know, S/4HANA is accessed using OData APIs, but many other products are also used and accessed over REST. So this is the second direction where we ask for your help by having a look at the second question here. Last but not least, for those of you that are watching the recording or that couldn't decide on our ask for feedback, on this slide we see several channels how we can be reached by you, and also if you want to learn more about how to get started with the Cloud SDK and how to try different things out, you can use one of the links on this slide. You see we are present on various channels, and not only on the SAP Community page and SAP Help page, but also on Open SAP, where we offer a free course. And of course, we are also blogging about our latest releases and also on what's new. And you can also have some nice tutorials that we prepared for you to get started and to get up to speed with the Cloud SDK. If you decide to learn more about the theory behind extensibility topic for S/4HANA, you can also have a look at our book here. And if you decide to buy it, feel free to use the 15% off code that's available here. Having said that, we want to thank you for joining and for your interest. We are looking forward to help you with your projects, and we open up for questions. Thank you. You can also use the chat for questions.
Yes, thank you very much. So if anyone wants to ask a question by voice, so you can raise your hand and I'll allow you or make it possible for you to speak. You can also use the Q&A tab. You can ask a question or chat, whatever you prefer.
To start, there was one question on the Q&A channel already, which was about SAP Graph, whether it's possible to consume SAP Graph APIs via SAP Cloud SDK too, and the answer is yes. Though there is no ready-made or out-of-the-box client library for SAP Graph generally released as yet, but if it turns out that it is in demand, then we could as well just make it available as part of the SDK, given that the PO agrees. But technically, this is from SAP Cloud SDK's point of view, just another SAP service, SAP solution, which can be represented as a client library. So the answer is yes.
Thank you. And we have a question from Raju. Raju, please unmute and ask your question.
Hey, I'm okay with this. So far, I don't have any questions striking in my mind.
Okay, thank you. So whoever wants to ask a question, please raise your hand. Otherwise, we'll be good. I see one question in the chat, in the Q&A tab.
will the client generator be released for JavaScript? So you mean the REST generator, right? So of course we can't promise anything. I don't think that I know that for JavaScript there's also work ongoing, but I can't tell you off the top of my mind what the current status there is in that regard. So yeah, this would be for now. What we showed you would be for Java first. Let's put it that way.
Thank you. And we have another question. Will the SDK also become available for ABAP Cloud?
There are no plans as of now to have an ABAP-based SDK released. There have been requests in the past as well, but only few and far between. If the requests, of course, gain a critical mass, then we take it formally to the PO. But as of now, SDK is available only for Java and JavaScript.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions? So I would like to thank the SAP Cloud SDK development team for this great SAP community call. The recording will be available on the SAP community call page in the SAP community. And we will also make available there the presentation. So thank you everyone for joining.
Also, a big thanks from our side, from the development team. It's always very nice to directly interact with the external consumers of the SDK. And we appreciate and would be looking forward to your feedback, not just on what SDK should contain in future, so there's a little survey, but even otherwise, we are always very happy to hear from you on the various channels that were part of the presentation. So whenever you have anything you would like to contribute to or raise about, just reach to us.
Yep. Exactly. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And wish you all a very good rest of the day and rest of the week and good times ahead. Thank you. We sign off from here. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.